Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Dante Fortson here with Go Ask Your Pastor, episode number 13. Jews have Negroid features. It's been a while since I dropped a Go Ask Your Pastor, but there are a few coming. I actually have a ton of these that I'm working on right now because a few weeks ago, I asked you guys to go ahead and send me sources. And so I have been looking at those sources, and this source right here, I'm going to go over again today. But before I do that, for those that want to support, go to patreon.com/Dante Fortson. You can become a patron. For those that are VIP patrons, there is a number where you can contact me directly, call or text. I don't always answer phone calls, but I do text back everybody that texts that number. It is specifically for VIP patrons. If you want to support via Cash App, you can do so with hashtag BHITB. If you want to support with PayPal, the link is in the description. And of course, you can always support in the super chat by clicking the $ during one of the premieres. For those that do want to support with cryptocurrency, I do have my cryptocurrency wallet addresses in the descriptions. And for those of you who do not have it to support financially, shares and prayers are definitely appreciated. So go ahead and click the thumbs up button if you haven't done so already. It'll help the algorithm put the video up closer to the top so more people can see it. If you have not subscribed yet, go ahead and click the subscribe button. And if you have subscribed, please click the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos that come out. And again, there are some more videos coming very soon. So today's episode of Go Ask Your Pastor is brought to you by Credibility. And Nefertiti won't have any once Zondervan responds to her accusation that they only said the Negroes are not from the line of Ham because Zondervan believed the racist ideology of the book written in 1900 called The Negro, a Beast. That's what it is. The Negro, a Beast. She has made this accusation, and for those who have not seen the video that I dropped, Nefertiti and the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, please go watch that video. I leave the contact information for Zondervan Academic and HarperCollins. I'm asking everybody to call them and write them to get a concrete answer as to their ideology and whether or not they were following the ideology presented in the Negro, a Beast, written in 1900 when they published their dictionary in 1967. And we'll have our answer. If they say, yes, that's what they're doing, then they have to explain why in 2020 they're still publishing that, and it's going to cause a ton of backlash. Or they have to throw Nefertiti under the bus as a liar and say that they had nothing to do with it. Either way, this should get interesting if they give us an answer. All right, so Go Ask Your Pastor. Go Ask Your Pastor is a segment on my channel where I get your pastor to give up the ministry and go back and join a gang because gangbanging is easier than answering these questions. So for those of you who have not asked your pastor any of these, just understand that it may get you kicked out of church. And I do not say that just jokingly. I do kind of say it jokingly, but no, some people have actually been kicked out of church for asking some of these questions to their pastor. All right, so today's information, I've gone over it before, but there have been a lot of new people to subscribe. And also, since I've been doing these Go Ask Your Pastor videos, I wanted to add this to this collection because these go over one piece of evidence at a time to make it easy to find what you're looking for. And this particular piece of evidence seems to make the urban apologist mad. So mad, in fact, that Cherry Love did a 4-hour video and never actually touched any of the stuff that I pointed out that this man talks about. So this guy right here is named Sir Harry Johnston. As you can see, he is a European. Now, one of the false narratives that is being pushed by some people in the Christian community, mainly the urban apologists, is that we only believe this stuff because we're black and that we're misreading history and context. Well, Sir Harry Johnston is a racist, a very openly racist man who was very, very heavily involved in Africa. And this very openly racist man puts it very plainly in his openly racist book, in which he talks about human zoos and basically espouses the ideology from The Negro, a Beast. That was written in 1900. Harry Johnston's book was published in 1910, just 10 years after that. And you can tell that he goes by some of the ideology presented in that book. So now, with that said, let me point out some of his credentials. He's an explorer. He's a botanist. He's a colonial administrator. He actually brokered some treaties in Africa. He was widely traveled in Africa. He spoke multiple languages, and he published 40 books about Africa. So understand that he was very familiar with Africans and what they look like. He was very familiar with black people and what they look like, even though he was a racist. Now, understand that since he was a racist, it means he did not like black people. He did not think very highly of black people. He thought black people were beasts. This is important. He was a very important player in the scramble for Africa. Basically, the scramble for Africa was the European plan to divide Africa up among the European powers at the time. And he was one of the key players in this historic event. Now, in his book, The Negro in the New World, which is housed at the Smithsonian Institute, he made some very interesting observations. Now, remember, he's a racist. This is important. He is a racist. He does not like black people, but he spent most of his time in Africa, which meant he was very familiar with black people and what they look like, their languages, their customs, and their cultures. So in his book, The Negro in the New World, this is a screenshot of the full page. The link will be in the description so you can go through and read this for yourself. This is pages 26 and 27. I'm going to read from page 27. This is important. Remember, page 27. So when you go read it for yourself, you can read this whole page. He covers several things. Now, I know the title says that the Jews had Negroid features, but he also points to several other interesting observations he made. So page 27, as you can see here, the picture's the same. You're going to see part of this picture as well. So page 27. The Elamites. For those of you who do not know who the Elamites are, go to Genesis 10 and you will see that Elam is a son of Shem, the line that the Israelites come from. Shem. You have Ham, Shem, and Japheth. We were always told that Ham was the black son and Japheth was the brown or Arab son. Shem was the brown or Arab son and Japheth was the white or European son. This is what we were told in Christianity, most of us that were raised in a Christian church. It says the Elamites of Mesopotamia appear to have been a Negroid people with kinky hair and to have transmitted this racial type to the Jews and Syrians. Now, for those of you who say we're taking history out of context and we're misreading history and putting our own spin on it, tell me why this racist man, if Jews were European, why would he describe them as having been Negroid people with kinky hair? Why would he say that about other European people? No, he was talking about black people, only he does not use the term black. He is very specific. This man who is familiar with Africans, speak African language. He's familiar with black people. He knows what black people looks like. And he says the Elamites, the sons of Shem, one of the sons of Shem, appeared to be a Negroid people with kinky hair and to have transmitted this racial type to the Jews and Syrians. There's a curliness of the hair together with a Negro eye and full lips in the portraiture of Assyria, which conveys the idea of an evident Negro element in Babylonia. Quite probably the very ancient Negro invasion of Mediterranean Europe, of which the skeletons of the Alps Maritimes were vestiges, came from Syria and Asia Minor on its way to Central and Eastern Europe. It is possible that in or on the verge of Arabia, the ancient basal stock of the generalized Negro parted, divided into two great streams of divergent immigration, one to proceed to Europe via Syria and the other to pass through Arabia to Egypt. He's saying Egypt. Who was in Egypt? Negroes. And tropical Africa. In Arabia or in Egypt, it may be, arose the difference between the long-headed African Negro and the rounder, short-headed Bushman, the last name becoming more habituated than this, congeners to a life in arid deserts or scrubby open country. The African Negro was again differentiated, probably in East Africa, into three main varieties. So We're going to stop right there. But understand, he's talking about Negroes in Africa and Arabia. Now, we're going to come back to this right here. You see this little caption underneath here? Let me go back to show you this woman. Right here. This is the woman he's talking about, where he says Negroid tribe of southern India. If you do some research in Cochin, India, there were black Jews that claimed to be from the lost northern tribes of Israel. I went over that a little bit in a previous Go Ask Your Pastor. The black Jews of Cochin, India. So now listen to what he wrote here. At the bottom of this page in the notes, he writes, the Jews are composed of 3 or 4 separate racial elements. The Asiatic Negroid strain shows itself officially in the curly hair, the long eye, and proportions of the skull. So the first type, racial type he names is Negroid, Asiatic Negroid. See, he's using very specific words here. You can't say that the word black doesn't mean black and he really meant dark-skinned Caucasians, which is ridiculous. We all know that's ridiculous. Dark-skinned Caucasians in Africa, no. The Jewish hybrids with the Negro in Jamaica and Guinea reproduce most strikingly the Assyrian type. Up here, he said the Negroes up right here. There's a curliness of the hair together with the Negro eye and full lips in the portraiture of Assyria. He's saying these Jewish hybrids with Jamaican Negroes produce what looks like an Assyrian Negro. He's being very specific here. You can't tell me I'm misreading history or reading whatever I want to read into it or misinterpreting it. He's being very, very clear. And if you're going to say that they're tanned Europeans in Jamaica, I mean, the explanations, in my opinion, or the rebuttals that we hear coming from some of these people have just gotten absolutely ridiculous. And it comes to a point where when you keep denying, eventually you lose credibility when the evidence starts to mount like this. It is quite conceivable that the great peninsula of Arabia was once populated as far as its natural conditions allowed by a primitive Negro stock. Quite conceivable. This is a racist white guy saying it is conceivable that Arabia was Negroid at one time, or Negro. He said they went all the way to Egypt. He's saying Egypt was Negroes. We'll come back to that in a second. Which may have been later on partially exterminated by changing and unfavorable conditions of climate and by the aftercoming of the white man in his types. He's saying that the Negroes in Egypt, Arabia, in those parts of northern Africa may have been exterminated by climate and the white man. So when you ask, why do we see light-skinned Egyptians today, understand that when Europeans invaded, they mixed. Europeans mixed into the African and Israelite people that were in those areas. And so they became lighter people. But that's after thousands of years. But here it is, a racist European saying that the Jews are black. They have Negro features, kinky hair, full lips. He describes the eyes. There's no way out of this. So what'll happen is you'll see that the pseudo-Christians, the UA community, what they will do is they will try to attack him because he's a racist, but they won't deal with the actual evidence of what he said. Now, at some point, you have to ask yourself why so many Europeans are calling Jews black. Why are they calling Jews Negro? Why are they saying Jews are not from the black Jews or Negroes are not from the line of Ham? Let me say it that way. Negroes are not from the line of Ham. I mean, you can dance around this and try to find every way to wiggle your way out of it, but eventually the evidence is overwhelming. So anyway, why would Sir Harry Johnston say this? Why would he make an observation and say, hey, these Jews are black? Elam appears to be a Negroid people, knowing full well that Negroes and Shemites aren't supposed to be from the same line, according to these Christian teachings and doctrine. Why would he call Jews Negroes if they were also Europeans like him? Why would he do that? The reason he said that the Elamites look like Negroes is because they do. We can see right here. Now, I'm not going to go over this piece of evidence right now because it deserves its own Go Ask Your Pastor. But these are the Elamites. This was discovered at Shushan Palace or Susa. If you want to Google Susa, Susa. These are the Elamite archers. The Elamites are mentioned in the Bible as archers. Shushan Palace, Shushan Palace, is mentioned in the Bible several times. So, for those of you who want to get a head start on the next, or not necessarily the next, but a future Go Ask Your Pastor, go look up the Elamites in Susa and Shushan Palace. There's tons of evidence mounting. This is an actual archaeological site, and I do have to go verify and fact check, but I believe it's currently under control by the French. And we're going to talk more about Shushan Palace and why we find black descendants of Shem on the walls. So anyway, make sure you go ask your pastor why they have not shared this information with you. I specifically want you to go ask Vocab Malone why he has not shared this information with you. He calls himself a specialist. So make sure you go ask him why he has not shared this with you. If he's a specialist, that means he should know about it, correct? Correct. So anyway, go ask your pastor, possibly get kicked out of church. But if your pastor doesn't know and they want to educate themselves, help them get educated. If your pastor doesn't know and they don't want to talk about it, find you a new pastor, please, because you don't want to be held back. You want to be growing in the word. I'll put it that way. You want to grow in the word. And any pastor that wants to hide the truth from you is trying to hold you back, and you have to question why some pastor wouldn't want you to know the truth. So anyway, if you're not grabbed your copy of Undeniable yet, make sure you grab your copy of Undeniable. It's full color evidence of black Israelites in the Bible. It shows history. It shows everything in full color, so that the only way to argue with it is to completely be cognitively dissonant. Shout out to Sister E for that show on cognitive dissonance. But yeah, it's proof right in the face. If you want the history, check out the Black Hebrew Awakening, the final 400 years of slaves in America. If you haven't already done so, please click the thumbs up button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. And if you've already subscribed, make sure you click the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. And with that said, until next time, I'm out.